You're still muted.
Pious. So
Now
That's got it.
okay.
I don't use Google much, so
There you are.
I made the common error of leaving it on mute.
Okay. Okay, we've got our chapter as well as the St. Louis chapter. As you can see here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 people right now. And it is possible we may get more trickling in here. We're all very excited to hear what you have to say and share with us.
Well, now I feel a little bit of pressure.
Don't feel pressured. Really, don't. We're all what's
Okay.
that?
I just didn't want to interrupt whatever you might be doing, a conversation you might have.
Well, I basically was telling everyone that you would be coming in soon, approximately 10:30, and that you would begin around then. And I would formally introduce you with your background. And then Ella, once you start talking, then Ella can put your agenda up on the screen. And then you can, begin your talk. We will save questions for the end.
Okay.
And some people are welcome to put their questions in the chat box, as well as perhaps verbally asking you. So Google Meet, you said you don't use Google Meet much. Do you know how to bring up the chat box?
I have.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say closed caption. So yes,
Closed
I have.
caption, yes, it is on there on the bottom of the screen. We actually have stream text going on as well.
And
So that is up to you.
And I found the chat box. So I think I'm ready to go. There's just a lot going. You guys have done this before. There's a lot going on when you've got chat on one side, 9 people in front of you, and words at the bottom.
Correct.
If you guys can figure this out, then you have no problem figuring out how to turn closed caption on a TV remote.
That's correct.
All right. And Ella, I feel like we have met before at maybe the Here Indiana event.
Probably. Ella?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention.
I feel like maybe we met at a Here Indiana event sometime.
That's possibly possible. It's been such a while that we've been out of the house.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted. I'm not sure how that happened.
Matt, you muted yourself.
I'm back.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know a lot of sign, but Kat let me know there that something was off. So thank you, Kat. Well, if I don't know how much background Terry provided, but I always like to start by saying there's really nothing unique or different about my story than your stories. We all have funny things that happen and hard things that happen because of our hearing loss. I am just fortunate. I think that even before hearing loss, the way my brain was programmed is I was always easy for me to find the humor in things, which, as you guys know, can be a helpful trait when you do experience hearing loss. At least it has been for me. So what I want to share today is just a little bit of my story and how I function, how things that I have found to make life a little bit easier or a little bit more lighthearted. So I am in no way a medically trained psychologist or audiologist. So I'm always a little hesitant when people tell me, "Oh, you have to do this thing," or "Why aren't you doing this thing?" We're all we're all on our own path.
Right.
I enjoy when people share their experience and say, this is what worked for me. So I will try. I guess I'm asking you to take this with that tone that I'm certainly not telling you what to do. I'm just sharing what has worked or what, sometimes more importantly, what has failed for me. So
Sure.
I have an agenda, but that was more just to help me kind of mentally keep track of
Sure.
the notes.
Can I go ahead and introduce you with your background?
Okay.
Well, we'll go ahead and get started. He's ready to go. So I'd like to give you a little background on Matt. Matt Hay has a BS in marketing and an MBA from Indiana University. Matt is currently the director of audiology sales for Redux. Did I pronounce that correct? Redux?
Redux.
Excuse me. Redux, the developer of a patented drying process for hearing instruments, wearable hearing devices, and personal electronics. Matt can often be found running, and he puts slowly, biking and swimming across the Midwest to support nonprofit hearing care and neurofibromatosis organizations. He's a frequent speaker, author, and podcaster on the subject of hearing loss and overcoming challenges. Matt's personal story of studying music leading up to his eventual deafness has been featured on NPR and optioned by Channing Tatum, the actor, for Paramount Pictures. He lives in Westville, Indiana, with his wife, Nora, and their 3 teenage children and his dog, Charlie. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and let you start, and we will go ahead and mute our microphone. Please save your questions for the end, and you're welcome to use the chat box to pose your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Terry. Sometimes it's strange hearing somebody talk about you in front of you, and you think, well, that doesn't, that's me. I mentioned before, there's nothing really unique about my experience. I just try to focus on the things that were really hard and the things where I've had some success. And I have found that the more honest I can be about that, the better that resonates. So I have a tendency to overshare things personally sometimes. And who would have thought that would end up being a good thing among strangers or new friends. So I'm from Evansville originally, so I've lived my whole life in Indiana. From Evansville, went to Indiana. We raised our family at a young age in Munster, and now live in Hamilton County. So I've covered a lot of the Hoosier State. Up until 18, I grew up mowing lawns and trimming trees. And my dad was a shop teacher in Warwick County, and we never really wore hearing care because, as you guys probably know, that just wasn't something you did even as recently as the 70s, 80s, 90s. And so when my hearing wasn't great, we just assumed it was loud noises. My sophomore year at Indiana, I lost all the hearing in one ear. And when you lose all the hearing in one ear in a matter of a year, something's not right. I went to an audiologist, and she said, this sounds really strange, but I don't understand your results. So we assumed I had bad audiologists. She said, I really think you need to get an MRI. And for a 19-year-old college kid who kind of feels like his whole life's ahead of him, the idea of getting an MRI, I don't even think I really knew what an MRI was at the time. And so we assumed she was wrong. It turns out the MRI showed bilateral acoustic neuromas. Some of you might have an acoustic neuroma. It's just a benign tumor on your hearing nerve. And but when you have 2 of them, that's a diagnosis for a disorder called neurofibromatosis type 2, or NF2. So I went from thinking my audiologist was bad to realizing my audiologist might have saved my life. So from very early on, I have developed a lot of respect for hearing care professionals. So I was very quickly diagnosed with that, and the doctor at Riley Children's Hospital said, "You're probably going to lose your hearing. These tumors will continue to grow." And he was right. And over the next 6 years, my hearing really, it was just almost a 45-degree angle down. And I eventually, in 2002, was implanted with an auditory brainstem implant, which is very similar to a cochlear implant. It looks just like a cochlear. It's made by Cochlear. The difference is, instead of going to my cochlea, because my nerve was damaged, I actually have it's like a little fly swatter of electrodes that have been sewn directly onto my brainstem. And so I've been practicing. I've been in kind of auditory rehab for 15 years now with my ABI, and I'm still improving little by little, almost to a point where if I can see people speaking, and I have a very nice, it's called the Jabra speaker, that is a very high quality speaker. I can almost follow along a conversation without caption. I can use the phone if I'm in a quiet environment and I'm talking to my dad, because my dad talks slowly, and my dad only has about 10 stories. He just tells the same stories over and over again. So he and I can have a good conversation, because shortly into the conversation, I know which story he's about to tell. So I'm doing very well for an implant that might not have worked at all. So the breakdown of kind of how I evolved with my hearing in my 20s, at any age, but particularly in your 20s, I was very embarrassed. I had a hearing aid because I had surgery to remove one of the tumors. That it caused some severe double vision and balance problems. So I was 23 years old and starting a new job in Chicago with a hearing aid, a cane, and glasses. And it was very embarrassing for me. And I wanted the rest of my life to be the guy that can't hear. When people talk about Matt Hay to their friends, they say, "Oh, he's got, a beard, he's kind of skinny." Are they going to describe me as, "Oh, he's the one that can't hear"? I was embarrassed that might define how I would be. That continued on through my 20s. In my 30s, I was fortunate to have the company that I worked for was accommodating to me and found a job that I could do without hearing at the time, because my ABI still was not working well. But it wasn't what I enjoyed. I was working on Excel, doing data analysis, and it was almost like, all of the things that you really enjoyed, we're going to take away, but you're still going to have a job and you're still going to have insurance. And at the time, that was very important to me. And so I sort of accepted that this was going to be part of my life, that being deaf, I'm totally deaf without my implant. And even accepted isn't maybe the right word. I think resignation is probably more accurate. That I sort of resigned to the fact that there were going to be things in my life that I can't do because of my hearing. And I did that for a long time. In my 40s, as I got a little better at that job, and I started getting involved with hearing loss not-for-profits, and started sharing my story with people, and started meeting other people. I developed a level of empathy, and I'm not bragging about that, because I didn't understand what empathy was for the first 40 years of my life. I thought empathy was, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then move on to the next thing. I learned that skill by being around others like you guys, and being around parents who have kids that were losing their hearing early. And I thought, I've developed a skill that I never hoped or thought I would develop. And it started giving me a little bit more confidence that maybe I didn't need to be resigned to being a data analysis guy sitting behind a computer screen all day, that maybe I had a little bit more to give. And I'm very proud to say that in my 40s, I've become proud of how my hearing loss has defined me. And I have a great network of friends, but I know that when things get hard in life, and as many of you know, this hasn't been the easiest year for a lot of folks. I feel like my wife and I, and hopefully our kids now, are a little bit more prepared for some of those difficulties because we've gone through that with my health and my hearing, and we've come out stronger, and we've figured out ways to adapt. And I don't think I would have had that skill set 20 years ago without having gone through what I've gone through with hearing loss and hearing recovery to some degree. So I'm very proud of the way my hearing loss has defined me. And I think people might still say, oh, Matt, he's the guy that can't hear. I think or hope now they might say, but he went back and got his MBA. He went back and did an Ironman. I hope that, yes, my hearing loss defines me, but now in a positive way because of the things that I have done or the things that we can all do in spite of that or because of that. So that's just a little bit of the evolution. And I don't think that's limited just to 20s, 30s, and 40s. I think that hearing loss is a big deal. So maybe it's something that you experience through your 50s, 60s, and 70s. I don't think we're ever too old to evolve. And it was just became very important to me that my hearing loss become something that I could be proud of and not something I would be embarrassed or resigned to dealing with. So that's a little bit of my background. The focus and what I wanted to share more of today, Terry mentioned leading up to the holidays, and so I was really thinking about how I deal with that. And a thing I'm very passionate about because I was so bad at it for so long, and as my confidence grew, I don't know that I'm good at it now, but I'm better at it, is being my own advocate for hearing loss. And we are our own best advocates. I roll my eyes on social media when I see people type things like they should. People are always typing they. I don't know who they is, but they need to open up a Cracker Barrel in Westfield, or they need fewer donut shops, or they need. There's no they. We're all one community. So for a long time, I thought, well, they need to make better masks. We are there. Like let's be our own best advocate. If there's something that you need, be the they. Be the one that does the thing that you need, and it doesn't have to be big. I think I'll get into that in a minute. But one of the things that I really struggled with that kept me from being my own best advocate is I don't like to create waves. I like to go with the flow, and sometimes with hearing loss, you sit in a room and you can't hear a conversation because somebody's blasting a radio, or you can't hear the TV because they didn't put closed caption on. For so long, I thought, well, I don't want to be a problem. I don't want to bug anybody. I don't want to be, and that just all stemmed from the lack of confidence and the lack of self-worth that I had. Because I realized it wasn't just me saying, I don't want to bother them. It was really me saying, I'm not worth, my voice and my experience in this room is not worth it. It's not worth disrupting what someone else is doing. And that negative thinking is not good for anybody, because I have only seen little pictures of you guys today, but I also know 100% for a fact, no matter who you are worth it. Your life experience is worth it. Your happiness is worth it. No one else's experience is more valuable than yours. We are all on a level playing field. So if you're in a room, and this is leading up to holidays, where you need something and you're thinking, oh, I don't want to create waves, there's a good chance 3 or 4 other people in the room all need something too, and they're all feeling the same way because we're all dealing with something. Maybe you're worried about a grandkid who had exposure to COVID and they're in quarantine, or you have another or your son is getting ready to take college finals, or your wife is waiting on test results from the doctor. We all have our thing, and it goes back to a level playing field of just like you would want help, but would want help with their thing. They're happy to help with your thing. So if you find yourself in that situation and you can think back to one thing that I shared today, it would be you are worth it. Your experience is worth it to say, hey, can you help me with this? And people are going to be happy to do it, because if they had the courage or the confidence to ask that, you would help them too. You know, we're all in this together. It's just easy. There's always somebody in a room who seems like they've got it all together, and they're never afraid to ask that thing. And I think that can be intimidating. But just because they're not afraid to ask doesn't mean they don't have their own things going on. We're just you're worth it. That's what I want the message today to be. I don't have the agenda up, so I'm trying to think through the order to make sure I don't skip over too much stuff. But how that applies practically to the holidays, I think one of two things, because 2020 continues to be odd. So even now, I don't know if I'm going to be with my parents in Evansville for Thanksgiving and Christmas, or if they're going to be home. You know, they don't know if they're going to have a house full of grandchildren for the holidays, or if they're going to be home by themselves as they have been for the last 9 months. And that's hard. I'm sure many of you guys are dealing with that. That unknown is hard. So I kind of broke out thinking about the holidays in two different ways. The first is if all goes well, we can get together in a group, or if you guys have family or a group of peers that you can get together with over the holidays, that can be hard because now you're in a group of people who aren't around you all the time, and they don't have a really good understanding of what you can get, what you hear, what you don't hear, what environment is good for you or bad for you. That comes back to being your own best advocate, because if you don't speak up for yourself, it's really unreasonable to expect someone else to that doesn't know what's going on up here. The things that I do that have helped me, I spent a lot of time faking it. I spent a lot of time nodding and smiling and laughing when everybody else laughed, even though I have no idea what the joke was. Or you turn this way because that person's talking, and then the person over here says something, and by the time you turn to see what they're saying, that person is responding. And so your whole conversation ends up like watching a tennis match, and you get done and you realize you have no idea what's being said. I've done that for a long time. I nodded and smiled to a dentist once after a root canal and realized that I was nodding and smiling to affirm that I had gotten the pain medication that I had never gotten. So when I went home that night and woke up with some of the most severe pain I've ever experienced in my life, that was the last lesson I needed. And never nod and smile to a doctor or a dentist after a procedure. But it's really the same way when you're home with your friends. There's danger in nodding and smiling. Sometimes I try to overcompensate, where if somebody comes in a room and says something about pizza, or somebody has a question about masks. So this happened at Kroger the other day. The person at the woman at the checkout line asked me a question, and I had no idea what it said because I rely so much on lip reading. Masks are the bane of my existence right now. They set me back 15 years. But if somebody asks about pizza, or the woman in the checkout line at Kroger asks me a question, my brain starts thinking, based on the context of this environment, there's only a handful of things she might be asking. So I try to answer all of them at once. So she said something to me, and I said, I will go ahead and bag my own groceries, but I didn't bring my own bag. Here's my Kroger card, and I don't have any coupons. And yes, the milk is mine, and here's my ID for the wine. And I could see by her eyes that she probably didn't ask any of that. But I tried to answer all of the questions at once. It would be so much more efficient if I had, and this still comes back to the self-worth and confidence thing, if I had just said, I'm sorry, I have poor hearing, and because of the mask, I didn't get that. So it's a process. It's not like one day we wake up and we're good at this. But in a large group, one-on-one is, just having the confidence of saying, if you're in a conversation with somebody, really just looking them in the eye, and I almost steal them away from the larger conversation. And I can be in a room full of people and be off in the corner and end up in the corner and having a very nice conversation with somebody. So I spend a lot more time in one-on-one conversations. Even something like in a big group, learning the closed caption on the TV remote. I use that because it's just one example, but that's an example of self-advocacy. When I say self-advocacy, it doesn't mean fly to Washington, D.C. and talk to your congressman. It's something as simple as I'm going to do what I need to support myself, and picking up the remote control at your parents' house, your kid's house, because you're all sitting around watching It's a Wonderful Life and you can't hear what's being said. That's just a very simple act that can make our lives a little bit easier. And again, no one cares, except when you leave, you need to remember to turn the closed caption off, because my dad will complain that his caption on his TV has been stuck on since I was home for Christmas last year. So I said, by now, let's just leave it on until I come home for the holidays next. The last one, and this is very simple, and I bet when I mention it, or if you read it there, for some people it's kind of an aha moment. Groups of 3 are my most difficult social environment. And it seems like, wait, really? Like, that's a small group. I can be with my wife and my best friend, and if the 3 of us go out and we're at a bar or we're getting coffee, there is a 100% chance that these are people that have loved me for decades. There's a 100% chance that they're going to end up laughing about something together because they have also known each other for decades. And I will be out because they'll get into something with inside jokes that is just very rapid exchange of information. They're not being rude. They're not intentionally leaving me out. They're just living their life. And if I say, hey, what was that? They will happily fill me in. But groups of 3 is the fastest way for me to feel left out. So I know if I'm going to do something, particularly if it's a long day, if you're going to the mall or going to do whatever people do outside these days, and I'm going to spend a lot of time, I will either decline or I will invite someone else. If you're in a car and you end up in because I rely on eye contact and lip reading, a car conversation with 3 people guarantees that I'm not going to know what's happening, because the other 2 are going to be chit-chatting away. It doesn't matter where I sit. All 3 seats are equally bad. So if I'm going somewhere in a group of 3, I'll invite a 4th person so I have someone to talk to in the back seat. Or I will tell them I can't go because I know that day there's going to be a level of anxiety and maybe even a little bit of sadness, even though I enjoy those people, their company. At some point, it's going to be a little bit down for me. So just keep that in mind. Maybe, again, not telling you what to do. I'm just sharing something that has helped me. So the flip side of that is, if we can't get together with our friends and family for the holidays, you still, the message is still the same about being your own best advocate, because not being with a group can be even lonelier sometimes. I'm sure we have all dealt with that to some degree over the last 9 months or so. The fact that you are all here and know how to use Google, and you've got a chat bot, and you've got the caption down below. The fact that I assume most of you, I've seen from heads turned side to side, that many of you have hearing aids. You guys are, and the fact that you're aware and have found HLAA and you have embraced this community, you guys are way ahead of the pack. You have embraced the importance of a support group, of an emotional connection, a relationship connection. You've embraced the physical help that an aide can provide. So kudos to you guys for being here, because I work every day with people that don't do any of the things, have never done any of the things that you're doing right now. But seeking out things like how to Zoom call. I use Zoom I open up 2 screens on every call, because not everybody has Google Chat or Microsoft Teams. I open up Zoom in one box, and then I open up a separate window, and I use Otter AI, OTTER AI, which stands for artificial intelligence. And it's very similar to what Google's Live Transcribe is. And so every phone call I make, I use my very nice speaker, which was a great $100 investment. But then free Zoom and free Otter. You can have free 40-minute phone calls on Zoom, and you can use up to 600 minutes a month, which is it really is a lot of time. And so, but that requires effort on your part, and it requires the self-advocacy of saying, hey, father, son, mother, sister, I'm going to send you a link, and you can click on that, and then we can have a very nice video call on the computer. That does come back to self-advocacy, but it requires us to make the effort. It goes right back to if we don't do that for ourselves, we can't expect other people to do it for us. So I think that I only half joke that there's never been a better time to be deaf or hard of hearing, because of the ability we have to communicate. I mean, 10 years ago, Kat was signing to let me know my speaker was on mute. We can do that through this really efficient video call. Do you remember how long, Skype's been around forever. I remember in 1997, Skype was going to change things. It felt like 15 years later, Skype still was equally bad. And then FaceTime came along, and it was a little bit better. And now we have Zoom and Google and Microsoft Teams, and it feels like we're there. So there are technology tools out there to support you. It just takes a little bit of effort to learn how to use them. The last thing, and I'll be quick about this, and I want to answer some questions, and then I can take a little bit more questions. But I left that company where I was doing data analysis, because the work that I was doing with hearing loss not-for-profits, I wasn't getting paid to do that, but I started spending so much time, I thought maybe it would be nice to get paid for this thing I'm doing every evening, because that's what I really love. That's where my heart is. So I made the leap to do that and found Redux. And what Redux is, a hearing aid dryer. It's a professional. It's like, you guys probably have a hearing aid dryer, like a Dry Lux or a Dry Store. I encourage you to use those every night. They're great. Redux is a professional version of that. It's like a dry cleaner versus an at-home Maytag washer and dryer. So it's something that a hearing care professional would use too. It actually, I've got it's just an 8x10 box, and you put your hearing aid in there, and about 12 minutes later, your hearing aid will be completely dry, and you'll have data printout to show how much moisture it removed. So it's just a much more professional tool that your hearing care professional, if they had this, would be able to provide that service to you. That was my biggest kind of put your money where your mouth is of, be the change, self-advocacy. I made the leap of saying, hey, I've had great hearing care, but man, every one of my hearing aids gets wet. It didn't matter how much I spent on one. I had a $5,000 Oticon aid, and I switched to Signia, and then I switched, now my cochlear implant, and they're all IP rated super high. I've not met one that I couldn't get wet. Whether it's from living in Indiana or I wear it when I jog, eventually it's always going to get bubbly. So I said to myself, if I want to get involved in hearing care, I don't need to be a hearing instrument specialist or an audiologist. That I have great ones. That's not a need that I have. But they always get wet. Maybe I can go find a way to make hearing aids drier. And it took about a year, but I ended up doing just that. So it was a good lesson for me of, that be that change that you want to see. And I think I understand life does not allow everybody to, or maybe you're retired, or maybe you're not in a position where you want to switch jobs. I get all of that. It doesn't need to be that dramatic. Even something I talk about face masks of, my mother-in-law now sews clear face masks. She's wonderful. She knew that would help around our house. She don't tell her this, but they fit horribly and they fog up. But it doesn't mean I don't love the effort that she made. So there are opportunities to be some of that change that you want. The other thing is, and I mentioned that I've had great hearing care. I work almost exclusively with audiologists and hearing instrument specialists now, and they are wonderful. I mean, I don't know how the path of my life that would have led me there sooner, but I've worked with brand managers in advertising executives and agencies, and I thought, these are neat people, kind of person you want to have coffee or a beer with. I've never met a group in one specific industry that were so commonly awesome as audiologists. And the reason I bring that up is I'm not to flatter, and I don't think any of you are audiologists, so I'm not looking to flatter anybody. The point I'm making there is, if you have a hearing care professional who you don't feel like is meeting your needs, or listening to you, or giving you the attention that you need, or responding the way that you want, this should be one of the most important, in my opinion, this should be one of the most important professional relationships in my life. So when I sit with my audiologist, it took me a while, but we hug hello and goodbye. We are friends on Facebook. When her sons competed in marching band, I'm commenting on the pictures that she posts, because it took a while, but I consider her to be a very close friend. Maybe that's not what you're looking for in a hearing care professional, but I'm just encouraging you, based on the experience I had with meeting them, that there are some amazing people out there. So if you don't have somebody that you don't feel that way about, consider continuing to look. I would rather not give any recommendations, just because they're all clients. You remember Michael Jordan said one time, Republicans, Democrats both buy shoes. That's why he never wanted to endorse one over another. So I kind of feel that way about audiologists. I would just encourage you to consider that relationship to be very important. And maybe you're very happy with your aides, but if you're not, I believe there is an opportunity for you to be. So that's that agenda. I'm looking through the comments here. The first one was about loops, and I am embarrassed to say how little I know about loops. And there is someone within the Hearing Loss Association of America who reached out to me about loops. She advocates for loops professionally, and she has asked me, hey, will you be a guinea pig as somebody who could benefit from this but doesn't know a lot about it? Maybe I can be kind of a Consumer Reports write a review of my impression of them. So that's something that, while I don't know about them, it's on my radar to learn more. I can certainly share more about Redux. I did not want this to be a sales call, or for you guys to think my intention of being here was to plug the device. But if you have had any issues with moisture or clicking, or most of the problems you have with a hearing aid come back to being moisture related. So if you could do me a solid and you could mention to your audiologist, hey, what do you know about Redux? And then if they reach out to me, my number's on here, and my email address, I would be happy to tell them about it, because we offer every audiologist that's interested a 1-month free trial, and we encourage them to offer every patient that comes in a free dry, so that they can see and hear kind of the difference. And if you think it's not right for you, you're not out anything. Because it's a professional tool, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to offer it to you guys I at the cost, I would have a very difficult time justifying the cost to an individual. You're better off probably spending a fraction of it on something that works half as well. Another thing that came up is about Kat had a question about the difficulties at school. So with 3 teenagers, my advice on difficulty at school probably wouldn't be any different with a hearing aid as it would be with glasses, or if you didn't have the coolest shoes, or you weren't an athlete. You know what I mean? I have learned a lot over the last couple of years as a parent that it doesn't matter who you are or what you do, somebody is going to find a way to try to build themselves up by putting you down. It just seems like maybe a hearing aid is an easy way. It makes somebody an easier target because it's more visible. And there's no easy answer for that. A lot of that comes down to just trying to be more comfortable with who you are. It's really unfortunate overall that hearing aids have the stigma that they do. I tell little kids when I speak to elementary schools that my implant, I ask how many of their parents wear glasses, and everybody's hand goes up because everybody's parents either for readers or sunglasses or everyday glasses. And then I explain that my implant is just glasses for my ears. It's just like what glasses does for your eyes. It's just glasses for my ears. And they all get it, and then they move on. They don't like, oh, okay, I understand now. I have a bigger problem with adults staring and pointing than I do kids. So I'm not sure that any kind of bullying or picking ever stops. It's just people are a little bit different. I have, because of my acoustic neuromas, my vestibular nerve is damaged on both sides almost as much as my hearing nerve. So my balance is very bad. If I close my eyes, I can't take 3 steps without falling over because I don't feel where I am in space. So it's kind of a weird feeling if I go on a playground swing and close my eyes, I have no idea where I am in the process because my body can't feel that. So I have a handicap pass. Because when I worked in Chicago, I would take a train to downtown, and sometimes it was a half-mile walk to the train, and then you take the train. So I got a handicap pass because in Northwest Indiana, it's pretty much snow and ice 6 months out of the year. And I fall on ice because I can't feel myself falling until it's too late. So if I slip a little bit, there was a 100% chance that was going to end up with me on the ground because I could not catch myself until I was midair, or I didn't know I was falling. And I had someone come up to me and poke me in the chest and accost me for barking in a handicapped spot when that person, in their mind, felt like I didn't deserve that. And I was so confused by what was happening. And so I kind of took a deep breath and said, I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that. I'm deaf. And that threw them off. And then as I walked off, I intentionally tripped and turned around and said, oh, I'm sorry, my balance is bad too. That was just me being a little bit vindictive. But the bigger point was we never know what somebody else is going through. And the bullying and the hardship doesn't ever even stop in school. So it really just, this is a long answer to focusing on just being, always pushing to be more comfortable with who you are. Fewer people would stare at me if I didn't have an implant. But how do I weigh fewer people versus being able to communicate in the world? So that's easy. We just have to make those decisions. When they removed my tumor, I had facial paralysis and I can't move. I can't feel this side of my face and I can only move about half of it. I would be lying if I said every day for 15 years, I wake up in the morning and a person looking back at me in the mirror is not the person I expect to see. So I'm still trying to get better at that every day. People will say, oh, it looks fine. Well, but we're all our own harshest critics, right? I think all of you look great. But if I asked you, you would all tell me probably something that you want to change about your hair, or your clothes, or your eyes, or we're all our own toughest critics. So it's just a constant, I don't want to say battle, but it's just an effort to continue being more comfortable with who we are. And I think it's a level of self-love, and loving myself enough to know that I'm worth it, and I can get past facial paralysis, because the person that's looking at me and I think they're worried about my facial paralysis, they're thinking about how to pay their tax bill. They're not thinking about my face. I have another anecdote I want to share, but I want to get to some of these questions. I will remind audiologists. So I'm answering the most recent question from Paula. I think the most little understood aspect of hearing loss is how mentally and emotionally exhausting it can be. People think of hearing loss as a physical disability, and I think when I think about what's hard about hearing loss, I almost always go, I don't realize it, but I almost, just thinking about it now, I go to the mental and emotional exhaustion of trying to pretend that I heard this, or should I be laughing? Who should I be looking at right now? I go into an office one day a week, and my wife said on Tuesday, she said, I can tell on Tuesday nights you are exhausted. And it's because on Tuesday nights, I don't have video and caption right in front of me. I spend the day in an office with about 5 people who are wonderful and totally supportive. But even in that environment, it's exhausting to be in a room and have to be on. And I can't nod and smile because this is my job. If a client says, "Can I have that for free?" I can't nod and smile. This is work. And so I think the thing that I have been bad about at home is being sure I take time. As ironic as it sounds, is I need some peace and quiet to be able to deal with being deaf. Because it's on. And you guys, I mean, you're all on mute, but reading the caption and reading the comments here is a challenge. I need a 60-inch screen, and I'm never going to find a more supportive group. We're not going to find a more supportive group than everyone here right now, but it's mentally can be very tiring. What I was very good about initially, but have gotten away from, is at noon, I will go make a sandwich and I come back into my office and I start working again. I was taking time to go walk the dog. Nobody's talking to me. Nobody needs anything. I leave my phone behind and take that time to, I'm not really, I don't know what the word, hippie is the wrong word, but I'm not really into like centering yourself. I don't do yoga, but I do know that I need breaks. And so I can't remember the last wedding I've been to where at one point during the wedding, I didn't walk outside. I didn't just say, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and then walk outside and just be outside by myself, where there's no DJ, there's no toast, there's no, other things happening. And the same with work. If I'm dealing with something in a normal day, I would have a call like this. And when it gets done, 20 minutes later, I'd have another one with 3 other people. I really need that time to just go stand outside and have quiet where I'm not reading, and to collect myself and rest up for that next call. The anecdote I wanted to share, and this is kind of like how I felt in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I wish I could give someone credit for this. I don't know where I heard it, but it really resonated, was in your 20s, you worry about what other people think of you. In your 40s, you stop worrying about what other people think of you. In your 60s, you realize they were never thinking about you in the first place because they were all too busy worrying about their own stuff. And that really stuck with me. I've tried to fast track that philosophy a little bit because I don't want to wait another. I'm 43 now. I don't want to wait another 17 years to apply the lesson. But I think you guys get where I'm coming from. The embarrassment that I might have about my implantar facial paralysis. Nobody cares about that because they've got their own thing. I'm going to look through here to see if there's any other questions. Ray asked about empathy, which is a great question. So I have a funny story about empathy. Once upon a time, my wife and I were talking about things that different skills or traits that after having been married 5 years that we really liked about the other person, and then things that we thought we needed to work on. I would highly recommend having the first half of that conversation and skipping the back half of the conversation, because it's very difficult to have a conversation with your spouse about, hey, what do you think I need to get better at? Or what am I not? Where do I need to improve? That conversation is very delicate and can go sideways quickly. But one of the things that she said was, I confused kindness with empathy. And I just assumed she was right. And she was so right that when I defended myself, I made her point for her. There's a difference in being kind. Kind, is, and I don't have a perfect analogy for this, but kind to me was opening the door for somebody that was coming in a wheelchair. There's nothing empathetic about that. I didn't really put myself in that person's situation. I think the hardest thing about empathy is the awareness, and seeing, because again, we get wrapped up in what we're dealing with, and really accepting and understanding that other people are going through their own thing too. I think that's what's been hardest to me about politics on both sides for the last couple of weeks. I mean, really longer, but I think we can all agree it's kind of ramped up that the last couple of weeks. Is just the inability to see the other person's side. And I think that's a first step in empathy, is recognizing that other people are going through something. And I think kindness is a great place to start. So if somebody says, well, I'm kind, but need to work on empathy, well, you're moving in the right direction. In terms of actual skill set, I feel like when we get done here, I'm going to start making a list because it's such a great question. I know that growing up, I got anything that I wanted. And I mean, what do you want as an 18-year-old? Like a CD player, or I wanted to be on student council, or I wanted a car. I got the things that I wanted before my health diagnosis by working hard. My dad said, work hard, work hard, work hard. My mom said, be kind, be kind, be kind. And I got the things that I wanted in life by doing that. And then I was diagnosed with bilateral brain tumors. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't outwork hearing loss. It wasn't that I wasn't trying hard enough or that I wasn't being nice enough. And it was the first time in my life that I realized, oh, this is what it means to go through something that's out of your control. And it really affected the way I view the world, because maybe that person that doesn't have a job isn't lazy, or they didn't work hard enough. Maybe they can't hear well enough to go through the interview, and now they can't get insurance, and now they have a big medical bill and they can't pay it, and they have to sell everything, and you realize just how quickly life can impact someone that is beyond their control. And that's when that really started putting me on a path of empathizing, because it doesn't have to be that dramatic. It might just be somebody that is really struggling with school, or really struggling in a relationship. Um, it being able to see outside of my own experience was kind of my first step toward understanding empathy. I don't know if that answered your question, Ray. I feel like I rambled a little bit, but you really made me think there. So here is, somebody asked about my ABI cochlear implant. Here's my old cochlear implant, which is just like my new model is the same thing. It's just a little bit skinnier. Everything about the hardware on my cochlear implant is on my Auditory Brainstem implant is identical to a cochlear. So even an audiologist will look at this and say, oh, you have a cochlear implant. The difference is if you're, and I'm going to just oversimplify this, if your hearing has 10 steps, most of us, the problem with our hearing is about step 2, where you start to lose hair cells, that process vibration. For a cochlear implant, and so let's say that's step 2 or 3 in the hearing process. If you have a cochlear implant, it means your cochlea, the damage went a little bit further, a little closer to your brain. So a hearing aid doesn't work because the damage is inside the cochlea. So a cochlear implant can step in at part 5 of the hearing process. And that's why that has to be surgically implanted, because you can't just stick a hearing aid in your ear and help. Because your nerve is really step 10, the nerve's what connects all the delicate hearing system to your brain. It's like you're going, the hearing is this huge 6-lane interstate. And then right before it gets to your brain, there's one tiny little bridge, and everything merges under that one tiny little bridge. My bridge is out. It got washed away in a flood. The flood was a brain tumor. So nothing I do on the outside of my ear or a cochlear implant is going to help, because that would be like fixing the 6-lane highway, but your bridge is still up. So this bypasses all of that, including the bridge. And some very, very intelligent people at the House Ear Institute in Los Angeles, California, in the late 90s said, we think this is the part of the brain that processes sound. And so they sewed the electrodes directly onto my brainstem. And then I had to wait a month for them to turn it on, for everything to heal. And they said, you're probably going to, if it works at all, I think they gave me a 2 in 3 chance that I would hear anything with it. But they managed my expectations that I would hear life sounds. Life sounds being oven timers and police sirens. But as somebody at that point who had been totally deaf the entire summer, and had burned a whole lot of pizzas because I put them in the oven and forgot about them until I smelled smoke, the idea of being able to hear an oven timer was pretty magical to me. And they were right. For the first 6 months, I heard oven timers. After about 9 months, I'd hear the click of my wife's heels as she would come home. After about a year, when she would turn the car on, I could tell that the radio was on. And every 6 months, I would go to get an update. And every 6 months, I would get a little bit better, to a point where now I was at a baseball game last summer, and I could hear the baseball hit the mitt of the catcher's mitt on every pitch. And I got tears in my eyes when that happened, and thinking about it now, I get a little emotional too. I forgot that sound existed. And anybody that's ever watched baseball, 2 of the greatest sounds are the leather on leather of the baseball on the mitt and the crack of the bat. And I had forgotten those sounds existed. And so 15 years later, to be able to hear this great sound that I forgot about was pretty magical. And I now go to I see Dr. Yates is the ENT at Indiana that I see now. And I go to Riley Children's Hospital, but I've been kind of grandfathered in there. They don't let me ride around in the wagon anymore. But I go to Riley because I've seen that audiologist there for 15 years now. One thing Teresa mentioned was the music. This was sort of an accidental, if you're familiar with the word serendipity, it's a great word. It's a fun word to say. But serendipity means an unexpected gift. I love that. When I was losing my hearing, I guess my early 20s, I was listening to a lot of the Beatles and a lot of I feel like everybody in their life needs to have a Beatles period. And the Beatles period for me was my senior year of college. And so when I was really knew I was probably going to lose all of my hearing, I thought, well, gosh, what songs do I want stuck in my head for the next 50 years? And so I really started listening to very intentionally to the same songs that brought me joy. There was a song when I first got, you guys have probably all been there at some point, where when you first get your driver's license and there's a song on the radio that you turn up and you roll the windows down. That song for me was by Prince, because I graduated from high school in '95. So to give you an idea, so I listened to a lot of Prince and Aerosmith and U2, and this is the music of my childhood that I associated with great things. My mom's favorite song, my parents love Bob Dylan and Simon and Garfunkel. So my mom's favorite song is Bridge Over Troubled Water, which to this day is a perfect song that represents really who my mom is and the kind of person she is. I thought, that's a memory I want to carry the rest of my life. So I came up with a playlist of about 20 songs that I would listen to over and over again. And then I lost my hearing, and I thought, well, I'm glad I listened to those songs. The serendipity part of that is my implant got good enough where I started being able to recognize when one of those songs came on the radio, or more often when my wife would play it on a CD, because I had all of those CDs in our car to listen to, and one of them would be in, and I would say, wait, is this Bridge Over Troubled Water, or is this Blackbird by the Beatles? And it would be, in fact, one of the very first memories I have is there's a hard piano chord in the Beatles' Let It Be. It goes bum, bum, bum. And I heard the three chords, and I looked around and said, is this Let It Be? And we pulled over and cried. I hadn't heard a song in a decade. And now the idea of being able to recognize one of my favorite songs. And so that led me on a path where that music that I listened to, thinking I might not ever hear again, became my physical therapy. And that playlist has now grown to 60 songs, and I have it on my phone. And much to my children's dismay, anytime they're in the car with me, they know there's one of 63 songs they're guaranteed to hear. And about once every 6 months, I will add one more song to that. We watched, it was a biopic of Rocket Man, an Elton John biopic. And the song came on of Frozen Here on the Ladder of My Life. What's the title of the song? Frozen Here. When the song came on, I thought, gosh, I haven't heard that song in ages. So I'm learning that song again, and it's just kind of neat to think I'm deaf and continue to hear new music. So that I'm only touching on that because I know in the intro Teresa mentioned music, and that's where the whole I don't know if you guys are familiar with Channing Tatum, but nobody would confuse me with Channing Tatum. But he's a very musical actor. And he heard the story that my wife and I did for NPR, and it really resonated with him. So that's where a movie thing came up. And we're not counting on any of that to actually happen because the movie industry is very weird. But it is kind of cool to think that legally, if Ray and I wanted to make a movie together, we couldn't because Channing Tatum owns the contract. So in 18 months, Ray, 18 months, we can make a movie, but not until then. That's the length of the contract. I just saw about, yes. So first of all, yes, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. Thank you, Bruce. Gosh, it's a great song. But I will say, Teresa mentioned about drums. Things do not sound the same. I had an audiologist who was very and he explained that things are going to be very different, but that's just how you hear now. And so it's kind of a crazy process. You guys have, if you've had your hearing aids cleaned or reprogrammed, and you walk out and you think things sound different, and it's weird. It's weird for one day your whole world to sound different. The people you know's voices are different. Birds, if you can hear birds chirp, the birds sound different. And you think, this is, I'm never going to be able to adapt to this. And then a day later, that's just how the world sounds to you now. John, Paul, George, and Ringo don't sound the same as they did 20 years ago to me, but I'm just happy I can hear them at all. I'm reading Kristen's note here. I think the part that the comment I made about managing expectations in response to Kristen's note about the ABI is, I think, an underutilized skill in the audiologists that I've even met, Kristen, is managing expectations. It takes so much encouragement sometimes to get someone to go in to even get a hearing aid. And then, I mean, my dad waited 20 years, and I think, I mean, Dad, I'm deaf and I only hear with an implant. Wouldn't that be enough for you to say, okay, I'll give this a try? But it took him 20 years to go get a hearing aid. And he doesn't clean it, and it's always wet and dirty. And so in his take is hearing aids don't work for him. It takes so much to get somebody in there that once they get in, I think it's important to manage their expectations of things are not going to sound the same as they're used to. It might take 5 hearing aid styles or brands to find the one that's right for you. Even when you find the one that's right, it might take coming back every 3 months or 6 months until we really make sure that it fits. A hearing aid is very scientific, but there's a whole lot of art to making it work well for a patient. It's not a matter of just plugging it in against your audiogram and it's going to be great. It's a process. And I was very fortunate that the audiologist that programmed my ABI was very, almost so zen that it was frustrating sometimes, because I wanted to know, how long is this going to take? When can I do this? And he said, you put the work in. You're going to see it improve, but it's going to take time. I don't know what you're going to get, but I do know if you don't work at it, you're not going to be happy with it. And I think the same thing is true for hearing aids. I have not heard Mandy play guitar, but if someone has a link to a video, I would love to see. Teresa made a comment about drums. One nice thing about drums is you can definitely follow a drum solo without losing. You don't need a lot of high pitches. So you get drums or something you can very quickly get back. And so that's definitely something that I follow along. It's been, I don't listen to a lot of new music, but when I overhear, with 3 teenagers in the house, there's always different songs being played. And it's interesting to see that sometimes it's the same group over and over again that I'm like, oh, I like this. Who's this? I can't remember their names for the same reason you guys probably can't remember any new bands that come out now. It's hard to keep up. But there are a few musicians over and over again where I'm like, oh, I really like that. Who is that? And then I'll find out they'll say, Dad, it's the same one you asked about last time. I have a dry-in. Someone just asked about a dry-in store, which is a great question in terms of hardware. I got a dry-in store with my cochlear implant, and I would encourage this is like the at-home dryers. I think the Dry Lux is like $40 at Costco. The dry-in store is probably $100, and they work okay. I would choose somebody to use those over not using them. They can't hurt. If I ask Kristen what and I'm not going to put her on the spot, but if I asked her what she thinks about at-home dryers, I'm going to take an educated guess that she would say they can't hurt. There are what would happen is my hearing aid would get, or my implant would get wet. I would put it in a drying store, and if it worked, great. If it didn't work, I would put it in again. I would put it in again, put it in again, until eventually it would either start working again or it wouldn't. I have no idea if it worked again. Going back to my research days of the job I didn't like, we talked a lot about correlation versus causation. Meaning, did my hearing aid get dry because I put it into the dryer, or would it have gotten dry on its own if I had just put it on a windowsill or in front of a box fan? So what those dryers do is they blow hot air over your aid. So it can't hurt, and sometimes that can help. Just like if your basement floods, you put a fan downstairs to try to blow out the air. Sometimes it'll get some of it out. If you do it long enough, eventually you're going to get a hard water stain on the ground, and eventually things are going to dry out. If you get a stain in your clothes, you put it in your washer and dryer at home. What makes Redux a little bit different is it has a sensor, so it will run until 100% of the water has been removed. So there's no moisture left in the aid. It'll give you a readout in real time of how much moisture is being removed. And on average, it takes about 12 minutes. So if you drop your aids in the shower, or if you've run it through your at-home dryer and you're still getting a bubbly noise, or if you don't use a dryer, and you can come in and use Redux and it'll take it out, all of the water out in 12 minutes. The benefit to an audiologist is they spend a ton of time diagnosing and cleaning aids. And many of them have either a doctorate, or all of them have a doctorate or a master's degree, and they still spend a lot of time cleaning our gross aids, because even when we take good care of them, aids get gross. And if I'm a doctor, I don't want to spend a lot of time cleaning out Matt Hayes' earwax. So Redux allows them to push a button and have all the water taken out in 12 minutes. And they get a lot of the gunk out, so that if there's any wax remaining, it's a little bit easier to clean out, because the moisture in there has been removed. If you wanted to buy one of these on your own, it would be about $3,000 or $4,000. And that's because there's a lot of technology that goes into that that's probably would bore you all. An audiologist has the option to buy that, and then they can charge you $10 for a dry. Give you the first one free if you say, "Wow, my aid sounds better." A lot of people are willing to pay to have that done every 6 months when they go in. But every audiologist sets up their business a little bit different. The audiologist has the option to lease this. If they don't have thousands of dollars to spend on something, they can pay $100 a month and have the service, so that if they can help recover one dead aid, and keep you from, if you guys have ever had to send an aid back out of warranty, that can cost several $100s. If your aid's 3 years old and it needs to go back, it's probably going to cost you a couple $100, 2 office visits. Your audiologist doesn't want to do it. Oticon doesn't want to get an aid back. So the only person that wins if an aid goes back out of warranty is FedEx. So if you can recover a dead aid that's out of warranty in Redux, which we do almost every day, there's a lot of value in that to the patient and to the practitioner. So I have all day. Actually, I have 25 minutes before Indiana football goes and kicks Michigan's butt. So I'm in no rush, but I want to be. I've gone way longer than I intended to, so I want to be respectful of you guys' time. So if there's anything else you want me to address, hit me up now, or you guys have my email. I'm happy to answer questions that way too.
Matt, we are so grateful that you joined us today, and you really provided an enlightenment for us. Thank you so much. We have a little token of our esteem coming your way, and I have a certificate on behalf of us, and also the St. Louis chapter has joined us today, so they're very happy as well. Linda is here somewhere. She's the leader, one of the leaders there. And so this was incredible. You gave us a wealth of information, and sharing your story was really enlightening. It's incredible what you have gone through. It really is.
Well, thank you very much. And one of the neat things to me about St. Louis being here as well is I do a lot of fundraising for the St. Joseph Institute for the Deaf, which
Yes.
is in downtown Indianapolis. But St. Joe has two locations, one in Indianapolis and one in St. Louis. And
Oh, cool.
last fall, I was able to visit the St. Louis location, which is in this gorgeous convent on the river. It was part of the Underground Railroad. There's just a lot of history to that. So St. Louis and Indianapolis are both obviously towns dear to my heart. And growing up in Evansville, anytime we had to go to the Good Mall, we would take 64 over to St. Louis. They were the first place to have a Banana Republic.
Yeah. I love the city of St. Louis too. I actually grew up in Illinois and we were only an hour and a half from St. Louis. So I used to go there all the time. In fact, I was a member of the St. Louis chapter for a while as well. So again, we want to thank you so much. This was really, really nice and inspirational for us.
Well, thank you.
I just want to say on behalf of St. Louis, thank you, Indianapolis, for letting us listen to Matt, and come back to St. Louis.
We will. In fact, the convention was there. The 2015 HLAA convention was in St. Louis. And I remember it was at the Union Station, which is beautiful, beautiful history there.
It's been, what has been special to me about this is when I first lost my hearing, HLAA was one of the first organizations that I reached out to for support. So it's kind of full circle to be here now. And part of my own self-advocacy is having gotten the courage over the last year to do stuff like this. So your feedback really means a lot to me personally.
Very cool. Very cool. Does anyone have any additional questions for Matt?
All right. Thank you, guys.
No? Okay. We want to thank you again, Matt, and your certificate will be in your email box this afternoon, and then we will be mailing you. And I think I have your mailing address. If not, I may ask you for it. But we will be sending you a token of our esteem. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to head out. Take care.
The rest of you, I'd like to, the St. Louis chapter and the Indiana chapter, let's introduce ourselves if you don't mind before we hang up. I'm Teresa Gonzalez. I'm